Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, one of my big frustrations over the last 12 months has been when you're trying to speak to someone or call a business or a service provider, they often email you from a do not reply email address. But if you do call, you have to push option 259 before being put on hold and listening to a recorded message for 3 minutes saying you can check out the website and do various other things, and then wait on hold for a further 20 minutes. And even when you do get to speak with someone, you have to explain the reason for your call repeatedly, even though you've called 3 times that week and just want an update. For me, I've made a decision. I do no longer work with those businesses. I cut them out of my life. I don't need the hassle and frustration at my age. But I can't help but think that as the experience economy gathers pace, that it's no longer acceptable to provide experiences like that. So today, I want to explore the world of communication as a service and learn more about how trends that are impacting the content, channels and data that are all used when engaging with clients and customers. And I think increasingly, we like to hop from device to device in the same way that we do with something like Netflix. We may start something on an iPad, switch to our phone and home computer. It could be WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, the chatbot. There are so many different ways that we communicate with businesses, but how do we unite all those communication channels? So I want to explore this topic further and explore the differences at various points in the customer lifecycle and shifts to a cloud-based solutions and curating an experience portfolio and how to curate an experience portfolio. So I invited Scott Draeger from Quadient onto the podcast to learn more. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Chicago, where Scott is waiting to speak with us now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I am the Vice President of Customer Transformation here at Quadient, which is about helping our customers transform themselves into more CX-focused organizations. One of the things that we do at Quadient is we make connections between our customers and their customers. And we want to do the same. We want to facilitate all sorts of customer experiences to help strengthen the bonds between our clients and their customers.
And in a few moments, we'll dive a little bit deeper on that and find out how you're leveraging technology to do all that and much more. But before we do, a question I always like to ask my guests is, what is your origin story? Sorry to get all geeky and comic book type question on you there, but where did your passion for tech come from, and ultimately what put you on this path you're on today?
Well, I shouldn't be here. I'm a English literature major, and my first position out of university was designing documents at a service provider out in the Chicagoland area, and I was programming healthcare statements, hotel loyalty statements. And it just happened that one of the software providers, the North American headquarters, was nearby. So I moved to the software side. But I took all the frustrations that I learned from kind of this high pressure, fast turnaround environment. I took all of the things I didn't like, and then I started to put them into the software. I started to notice that different people from different departments had trouble speaking the same language. So that turned me into somebody who advocates for looking at problems from a variety of perspectives, and putting that into software truly makes me excited.
Love that story. And it's something I can relate to as well, because I used to be the IT guy that used to sit in a lot of meetings. And when you got the IT guys in a meeting with, I don't know, catering or finance, as soon as the IT guy opened their mouth, suddenly they would start thinking about what they want for dinner, and their eyes roll back in the back of the head, talking a completely different language again. And it's so important to have someone that can speak both languages and be that bridge between the two. But of course, here in 2021, that path eventually led to Quadient. So could you introduce listeners to exactly what it is and expand on the kind of problems that you set out to solve for your customers?
Quadient is a leading provider of customer experience and customer experience technologies. One of the things we do is help our customers build stronger connections with their clients. And one of the things that's interesting about us as a company that's different is we believe that if we're telling our clients that we're going to improve the customer experiences they make for their customers, we better do that for our customers. So we took an entirely different view, and we say we're a customer experience company, and it's really moved through our entire DNA. So we're improving the way our customers communicate with their clients. We're improving the way our organization interfaces with the market, and doing a lot of what we call non-product innovation to just make everybody's life easier.
And I'm hearing more and more about the experience and the customer experience being more important than the transaction now. So Quadient recently claimed that its businesses face a customer exodus if they don't shift to communications as a service. And that also came at a time where the IDC predicts that a quarter of all connectivity budgets will run through CaaS within 2 years. I mean, can you set the scene and tell the listeners a little bit more about the story behind this belief and the kind of insights that you've picked up there?
You've picked it up exactly. Customers are increasingly demanding almost instantaneous replies across a variety of channels. Different departments within the business are struggling to keep their own individual communications running across a variety of channels. And if you go up a level, it's even more difficult for somebody to manage an entire portfolio of customer communications. There are mismatches. I mean, the Olympics is just kind of finishing up. And one of the things that I was watching was handoffs in track and field. If you think about your business, there are probably several terrible handoffs. When marketing works, what happens? Somebody gets shifted over to sales. Is that handoff clean? When sales shifts over to support, is that handoff clean? And when you multiply the departments by the communications, by the channels, you wind up with a very complex communication and customer experience portfolio to manage.
That's such a great analogy there about the handoff. And I think it's something that every business is battling with, because I think as a consumer, we go from device to device. We don't care if it's Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or the company chatbot or the telephone call. We just expect everyone to know where we were before and have that handoff. And businesses are currently facing huge pressures with customers demanding an almost instant reply across an increasingly expanding range of channels, like you said. And while different business departments struggle to keep pace as interaction with customers are slowed by that constantly need to call on the assistance of their IT team, I think there is an argument that these problems risk damaging customer experiences and ultimately leaving people to conclude that the business is just too slow to respond and just makes them repeat themselves at every single touch point or communication point. And before you came on the podcast today, I also read that Gartner is reporting that more than 4/5 of businesses compete based on customer experience. So this poses a real risk that they'll leave for a competitor. But I'm curious, how are you seeing the landscape evolve over the last 12 months? Are you seeing huge changes like this?
Well, one of the things that we were looking at, and it was another Gartner conference they had recently that showed that more than half of customers who sign up for a SaaS offering are immediately unhappy. And they're starting to show up with, pitchforks and fire if they're unhappy with a service. And what I mean when they show up with pitchforks and fire is they maybe have been oversold on some of the ease. So when somebody's thinking about communication as a service, a lot of times they think, oh, this is just an easy thing. I'm just going to sign up and start doing the project. But if you take that down to the micro level, which is usually where communication as a service starts, many of the projects start off as communication is an afterthought of another software as a service offering. So whether it's a accounts receivable, accounts payable, it could be a contract lifecycle. But at the end of the small service that as a service offering is delivering, there's a communication that's just exported. So it's kind of like, oh, communication is a side effect of this cloud service I bought. Budgeting, almost anything. But what happens is folks who are using this, they have trouble connecting to the larger portfolio. So it fractures brand voice in ways that the teams who are supposed to monitor brand voice cannot see. It's an undocumented touch point. It's an email that didn't leave their server. It's a text message that didn't leave their server. It's tough to keep track of that in the GDPR world. And also, customers have an expectation that it's really easy to set up and manage communications as a service. It should be. And one of the things we strive for as a customer experience spin on it is we make it easy to handle billing and cross-departmental usage, because we want to follow that communication and enable the proper management of a communication portfolio. And you can't do that without attributing performance and costs across all the different communications. So we take a system view, a holistic view.
I must admit, as a consumer, if on the rare occasion that I need to speak with a company that I'm paying for a service for, if I need to speak with someone and they send me emails from a do not reply email address, or if I try and call and you have to push various numbers and options to then have to sit on hold and wait for that 2 minute, sorry, because of COVID, it's going to take a little bit longer to answer your call. I dump those companies because time is the only non-renewable resource, I think, at the moment. But I'm curious, how do you see communications as a service creating agility and creating speed?
Yeah, this one's an amazing question, because on the surface, that's why everybody wants to buy communications as a service, as technology.
Yes.
But if you take a step back, it a little bit doesn't make sense. What you get with communications as a service is instant access to powerful communication infrastructure and some designs. So you get tools to start quickly, but it's really about the infrastructure. Because the biggest bottleneck that most of the business users face is they can't get an IT project on the radar. It's something to look at when people are considering communications as service technology, which is a great thing to consider. Really push to see if your IT team is going to get rid of some of that work. Because if there's a service that requires you to have your IT team expend hundreds of thousands of dollars or £100,000 in research, in consolidating data before you can use the service, you didn't save any money from the service. So you have to make sure that it takes the data in the formats that you need, in multiple formats, and can consolidate that into clear communications. Because if you're just buying access to a design and composition engine, but you have £1 million worth of internal data work, you didn't save anything. But it's about the speed of design and the access to infrastructure.
And I'm curious, I think everyone listening will have had that experience where they call department A and then later call department C, or get passed through, and back to that handoff period that you were talking about there, and you have to re-explain yourself right from scratch. So do you have any real-world examples of how at the touch of a button, agents could actually look back at the customer interaction, or every customer interaction across multiple channels, so they have the whole picture and customers won't have to repeat themselves? Because I think that's something that would appeal to every customer out there.
Yeah, that's something we definitely take a look at. And it's from a proactive and a reactive standpoint. Yeah. From a proactive standpoint, as you mentioned, agents need to see all the communications. They need to see the history of the communications. So we have some customer journey orchestration technology that helps nudge the customer as they move through a journey to make sure it stays on track, make sure the agents are following up. Our interactive communications allow people to see previous communications, easy integrations with archive systems. So that's the reactive part. So agents can have access to this. Now, our proactive part, we suggest people use journey mapping to really understand what their experience portfolio looks like. If they understand what their experience portfolio looks like, they may find moments where the communications are not serving the needs. Now, I'm not going to assume that you're a lawbreaker here, but I want you to think for a second of, and everybody listening to the podcast, think of your auto insurance number. You probably have an auto insurance policy number, and think in your brain about how you would get that number. If I asked you to produce that number, think about how long it would take. Would it take you a minute? Would you have to go to a few websites? Would that be a pretty easy and stress-free experience? Probably. But now imagine doing that with police lights flashing behind you. That's an entirely different experience. So the same customer at different times may have different experiences. So really, this is about putting communications in context. Because if I'm looking for my insurance policy number when the police have me pulled over for speeding, that's a different experience. And messing up that moment could cost me my relationship with every one of your lines of business.
Perfect example. Love that. And I'm conscious we have raised quite a few issues and talked about problems today, but I am a solutions rather than problems guy. So I've got to ask, where does Quadient fit into all this? How do you help businesses reserve IT resources for high value efforts?
Well, the first thing we do, and I mentioned in the origin story, is that I love when departments come together and do just enough work and apply their expertise to the maximum in a way that collaborates efficiently with removing friction. So we do this across our whole portfolio. Our portfolio we were the first one in the communications as a service industry to incorporate customer journey mapping. Since then, 7 companies followed us into that path. So customer journey mapping helps build that experience portfolio. That allows some of the new marketing or customer experience people to see the impact that their communications have. This allows more IT-driven or post-sale communications to get some of the spotlight they deserve. There's basically 4 kinds of communication. Pre-sale marketing, at-the-sale contracts, welcome kits, normal servicing, and then exception handling. Each of those has to be on the customer experience radar.
And I'm curious, is there any trends in the kind of conversations that you're having with brands at the moment that when they're coming and asking to you guys for help? Are there any particular things that you're getting asked again and again?
For sure, there's some interesting trends with customer experience, but the most interesting one is that more people are involved when we talk about new projects. So about twice as many, sometimes 3 times as many people show up when we have some of these discussions. And that's because different types of roles within the organizations want to apply their skills and knowledge to communications, because communications are important touch points. Not every touch point is a communication, but all communications are touch points. So they need to be managed as part of a customer experience portfolio. So we're trying to elevate normal routine customer communications, operational communications, marketing communications. We're trying to elevate those to the top level so context is apparent.
And as we move forward now, we're going into a post-pandemic world, but there's also talk of hybrid working and also a big focus on sustainability and climate awareness and how we can all play a part in that. So I've got to ask, what's next for you guys? Where do you go from here?
Well, one of the things we're working on is our Evolve platform keeps expanding so we can address more use cases. Our clients were telling us they want more granular use cases so that they can quickly spin up new types of communications. So we're making it easier to stitch up data to ready to go layouts, because rapid collaboration is important. We're also looking at adding more customer experience, customer journey orchestration, customer journey optimization to the customer communications management suite, which really takes us into a customer experience management type of role, where we're combining IT architecture with what some of the leading analysts, especially Forrester, are talking about experience architecture. So instead of a Marcom stack, they're starting to look at things as an experience architecture, understanding that after the sale is important.
Love that, and love chatting with you today. But before I do let you go, a question I always like to ask my guests. We began our conversation today talking about your origin story, what put you on the path today. But now I'm going to ask you, what was the soundtrack to that origin story? Right? Was there a particular song or piece of music that has inspired you throughout your career, or just helps you get your head in the zone before going in a meeting or going on stage? Is there a song and a story that we can share to our Spotify playlist?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm happy to contribute this one. I'm from outside of Chicago, so I'm going to go with a Chicago band, the Smashing Pumpkins, and their "Tonight Tonight" song, because it talks about the urgency of now, people being different, understanding things, and making the most of a moment.
Wow, what a great choice as well. I'm a big Billy Corgan fan over here. So before I let you go, though, for anyone listening who wants to find out more information about the work that you're doing, how to contact your team, or just find out more information about Quadient, what's the best way of doing that?
Oh, the best way is to check out our website, Quadient.com, and we're in the experience area. So Quadient.com/experience, or if you just look on our main page, you can find the experience. We have a lot of blogs, and I personally write a lot of blogs and articles. So I would love it if anybody checked up. You can look at my name on the blog entry, and if you like something, leave a comment. If you don't, I'd respond well to feedback.
Well, I've loved chatting with you today. There's so much. I was reading about you when I was researching Quadient, about how you guys, I've got this huge reputation for being the driving force behind the world's most meaningful customer experiences. But more than anything, for me, it was more about just getting you on here, sharing your story, your journey, and the impact you're having on the industry and how you're moving forward. But thank you so much for sharing that with me today.
Thank you, Neil. It was a pleasure to be on.
With Gartner reporting that 4/5 of businesses compete based on customer experience, I don't think consumers will continue to put up with poor communications, and businesses must act accordingly. But I'm curious, what are your experiences, whether you're a consumer or a business? What are your frustrations? What are your tales of customer delights? Please, I invite you to email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. If you've got any questions or pictures to come on the show, keep them coming across too. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. And if you connect with me on any social channel at all I ask is you don't hit follow. Send a message as well. Send me a quick message that you listen to the podcast so I can speak with you. I'm not going to lock you away from a do not reply email address. My plan for this podcast is to speak with you all and engage with you all. So a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.